we shift attention over to British singer and songwriter who has landed into legal trouble over the issue of copyright yet again. And yes, I'm talking about Ed Sheeran. On Tuesday, Ed Sheeran appeared in the New York City court in a high-profile copyright trial. Sheeran is being sued for copyright infringement for his 2014 hit, Thinking Out Loud. He's accused of copying Marvin Gaye's legendary R&B song, Let's Get It On. In the courtroom, Sheeran testified that he and his collaborator wrote the song based on Sheeran's own experiences. He further says that he frequently performs such mashups in concerts. Sheeran is accused of copying Let's Get It On by the heirs of Ed Townsend, who co-wrote the song with Gaye. Now, Townsend's daughter, Catherine Townsend Griffin, sister Helen MacDonald, and the estate of his former wife, Sherry Gaye Townsend, are the listed plaintiffs on the Thinking Out Loud case. Now, Gaye died in 1984 and Townsend died in 2003. It should be noted that Gaye's family has previously sued other artists for copyright infringement and even won. At the same time, Sheeran too has faced previous legal battles over his music and won too. In a 2022 case over his song Shape of You, a judge ruled in Sheeran's favor that he did not copy Grammy artist Sammy Switch's song Oh Why. He was also sued in 2016 over his single Photograph, which was settled out of court. The boom in copyright lawsuits is indeed rattling the music industry. Let's place this news story into perspective for you, and for that, I'm joined in by Seth Schachner, who's the managing director of Strat Americas. Seth is also an experienced business development executive from the music industry, who's also worked with global artists such as Shakira and Ricky Martin. Many thanks to you, Seth, for joining in. Let's begin with the legal aspect.
Great to be here.
What are both legal teams trying to prove?
Well, so, this is a hard one. And as you just pointed out, this isn't something that's terribly unique. And in fact, that recent, these sorts of copyright and plagiarism, legal initiatives have gone on for quite some time. And I think here in the plaintiff's case, these are descendants of a co-writer of just one of the most legendary artists, Marvin Gaye, and in particular one track that are, trying to prove that some pieces of that track were copied and therefore they're entitled to some sort of remuneration or sharing copyright, if you will. And I think that's the essence of what this is all about. I don't think it's anything new. And I think just my top level listen, I wouldn't say a musicology expert, but I don't actually think it's the same track. I think it's a similar chord progression and it sort of leads to one another, but I'm not sure they're going to be successful personally, but we'll see.
It's interesting you say that, Seth, whether Gaye's family or Sheeran, interestingly, both sides have a legal history and both have won their cases. Many are asking if this case will also meet the same fate when Gaye's estate sued Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams in 2015.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a watershed moment, if you will, which was more about, the sound and feel and vibe, if you will, of the track being similar. Little bit unusual in my view. I think this is a little bit of a harder one. This particular artist, Ed Sheeran, as you pointed out, does have a history of settling. I think the track Photograph that you just mentioned was something that probably, I think he's even said, to kind of open the floodgates to additional claims or people reaching out to him. And I want to say Shape of You, he added some songwriters from TLC to it after some of the fans pointed out some similarities, and so it's really unclear, but I think when you look at the legal side of this, a lot of these things either settle, out of court between the artists and the songwriters, or heirs and descendants, if you will, and others go into things like legal appeals. I mean, maybe notably the track Led Zeppelin, the Stairway to Heaven track from Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin actually won that case that it was inspired by another song, on appeals in court, as did I think Katy Perry just won her a settlement, actually a legal victory out of court as well, when she was sued. So these things are, kind of common. And, I also think basically that sort of the newest generations of songwriters are making music in a way that is, electronic, collaborative. Sometimes they're not in the same studios at all. So I don't think it's terribly unusual.
Seth, you're the right person to ask this. Why is plagiarism so hard to prove in music copyright lawsuits?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, no one owns chords, right? And A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. There's certain chord progressions that are out there that no one can legitimately say I own. And so I think Sheeran himself has said a pop track can fit over another pop track. And there's always lots of inspiration in the pop world. And so I think there's an element of subjectivity when you listen to these things. I do think it matters if you can show there was a willful type of plagiarism or not, because I think a lot of the history of pop music is based on artists inspiring others. And so when you really get down to it, those chord progressions are probably hard things to prove in courtrooms.
Right. Seth, there have been a number of prominent music copyright lawsuits in recent years, some of which you even just mentioned. What have been your observations through these lawsuits?
I mean, the main observation is just what I said, is that I don't think there's any kind of black and white kind of way to look at these things. I think that there's an element of gray that's in there. And I think that they're all subject to perhaps subjective interpretation by juries or courtrooms. And I think the new generation of songwriters, in terms of how they compose electronically, share beats remotely, makes it harder and harder to kind of enforce these things. And I actually do think that the case you referenced earlier with blurred lines, makes it even less clear, that you can sort of be, acted upon and found guilty if a track or a piece of music has a feel to it that's similar to others. So it's a complicated sort of subjective thing. I think there's for folks that work on the business side of it, if you're not, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm more on the business side. There's a certain curiosity to this topic, maybe an eye-rolling curiosity, if you will, in terms of what's going to be a
Right.
violation or what's not. And in general, I don't know if these suits kind of move the industry
Right.
forward. I think they're things that are looking back a little bit. So it's a hard thing to prove, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to be optimistic about any of them. I think even if you listen to what was said by the plaintiffs here, they acknowledge that this artist, Ed Sheeran's a great artist, and there was some reluctance to actually bring the suit to a courtroom.
In his defense, Sheeran has said that coincidence is bound to happen. If 60,000 songs are being released every day on Spotify, that's 22 million songs a year, and there's only 12 notes that are available. Clearly, there's a fear that songwriters are set to face future lawsuits and are going to be drawing legal battles. Is this going to stifle creativity in the long run?
I hope not. I think, the way technology is working now, so much of the focus in our country, in the US, is around robots and algorithms and artificial intelligence
Right.
creating music as well, which at least presently there's no copyright that is kind of ascribed to those. So I don't think it will stifle creativity. I think if you look at certain artists, I'll mention Peter Gabriel and Grimes, who've actually kind of opened their arms at a pretty early stage to AI, which is what is most on our radar now, as opposed to human plagiarism. I think the way with the future is going to be about more technological changes, kind of changing every part of the industry, even on the songwriting side and the production side of the business. So I think everyone's going to kind of have to get used to it a little bit. And to your point, yeah, it's kind of hard to prove if there's that many tracks being uploaded to digital service providers daily.
Sure. While there's been a surge in high-profile copyright infringement cases, at the same time, the way in which people consume music is also changing. Do copyright laws also need to change?
Yeah, well, they need to be, I think, continually modernized and continually aware of all the new technological changes. I don't know if the basics, if you go back to how songwriting and music copyright and publishing works and master recording, those rights aren't necessarily ones that need to change. But I think the law does, of course, need to keep up with technological innovation. Right now, at least in the US, and probably Western Europe, the biggest focus is on copyrights and this new generation of artificial intelligence and how the two apply to each other. And I think there's a lack of clarity right now. And I think that for sure is something that needs to get modernized, as this wave goes forward. You're already seeing pretty disruptive tracks, that were generated by AI, whether the vocals or the instrumentals, all sorts of permutations, if you will, of that. And the law is a little bit unclear right now. So yeah, that needs to keep modernizing.
Let's see how this pans out for Ed Sheeran for sure. Many thanks to you for joining in, Seth. It's been a pleasure to have you on my show.